Jiminy Cricket.
I'm David Swift. I'm sitting here with one of the famous animators in the whole world of animation.
How's my coiffure?
He not only animated some of the classic cartoons of the world's animation studios, but he does other things. He paints, he writes, he collects trains, he plays tailgate trombone. He does all sorts of incredible things. This is Ward Kimball, who began at the Walt Disney studio. Ward was already an animator when I was an in-betweener, and later he grabbed me for an assistant, and I spent lots of marvelous years with Ward.
I was wondering when you were going to be through.
I want to hear about the studio in the old days, Ward. Tell me what it was like
in 1934. When I came down to the studio, I brought my portfolio. Walt came in and he says, that guy'd make a good animator. And so I got started in the in-between department. And it was kind of hard, but I got fascinated with it.
Where Ward started and where I started, in the in-between department, which was separated from the main studio, was across the street.
It's called a bullpen.
And this was the lowest form of artist in the studio. It's where the assistant animator sends the scene over to across the street, and we put the final lines between the lines of the animator and the assistant animator. That's where Ward and I started.
Cricket's the name. Jiminy Cricket.
But Ward was innovative. He always pushed the envelope on everything he did. He gave character to the characters. Jiminy Cricket wouldn't be alive if it weren't for Ward Kimball. He gave him his attitude, his temper, his pugnaciousness, his anger with Pinocchio.
Look at yourself. Smoking. Playing pool. Oh!
Are you the father of Jiminy Cricket? And I says, well, I'm a reasonable facsimile. Who ever heard of a cute cricket, right? So I'm going to sit down and try to show you, as I remember it, the metamorphosis of Jiminy Cricket. This is roughly how a real cricket looks, and it's pretty bad. So I sat down, and Walt says, well, make something that'll work. He's got to be cute. We're going to see him all the way through the picture, and it's too gross. And I said, well, I eliminated the sawtooth legs, and he's got a coat on. He said, oh, no, go back and make him cuter. So finally, after a lot of trial and error, we started out the Jiminy Cricket, and he really turned out to be a much more enduring character.
Well,
He did the four crows and Dumbo. I mean, they were just black birds until Ward got his hands on them, and suddenly they were blackbirds singing, but I be done seeing about everything.
When I see an elephant
When I see an elephant fly. Hyperion was in another area of Los Angeles. It was over near Griffith Park, which is sort of on the edge of East Los Angeles. It's another area. It was a small studio, by comparison, in a residential area. I think it was 2 floors, wasn't it? 2 stories high.
Yes.
It had a rotunda, a courtyard, and it had one little sound stage, tiny, tiny sound stage, where they would shoot figures for a process known as rotoscope. They would photograph actors in the costumes, and then they would be traced off of the large moviolas, and the animators would use these to get the flow of the real people.
Wow.
I remember coming to this little soundstage where they recorded that, and the doors flew open, and out came Marge Champion. You remember Marge?
Oh, yes.
She pulled up her dress, and she went, I thought I was going to die in there. It's so hot. And I looked at those legs, the most beautiful legs I'd ever seen in my life. They were gorgeous. And I carried that vision with me all through my childhood. We were all making $18 a week, and it was big money in those days.
Well, I started out at 15.
Wow, I got $3 more than you. I started out at 12 as a traffic boy, delivering pencils to you guys. It was a time, they gave us free art classes there with nude models, which shocked most of us. We'd never seen a nude model before. Remember those days?
Yeah.
But if you don't mind, the other way, please.
Oh.
Do you remember where they sent the reluctant dragon back, the whole thing to be to ink and paint?
I'll only be a minute.
Because the Hayes office wouldn't let him put a belly button in the dragon. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
Oh, dear.
Did you guys know that?
Oh, you love this.
The reluctant dragon was almost ready for release, and the Hayes office looked at it and said, "You can't show the navel." They had to send the entire picture
On a
back.
dragon, for
Dragon.
sakes.
Oh, I'm bad, I'm bad.
In 1936, when the money began to roll in, Walt gave a party to celebrate his newfound
Lake
studio.
Narconian.
Narconian. He bought out a hotel in Lake Norco, and everything was free for the animators and the in-betweeners and the ink and painters. Now, we were separated from the ink and painter people because they were in another building and we weren't allowed to fraternize, remember?
The married people were upstairs.
That's right, and the single people had run of the place. It was a madhouse because we'd never been exposed to free drinks or free food and free hotel rooms. Everybody was running around.
Walt was kept.
Walt and Lily showed up. They took one look and fled. It was a bacchanal, which Ward later captured for Fantasia, right?
Oh,
Bacchus
yes.
on his donkey.
Bacchus when he comes down that hill.
Yeah. Ward, I recall two horrible things that you did to me when I was your assistant. Horrible.
Did I do horrible things?
Yes, you did. Everybody says you're a marvelous guy, but you're really not.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
First of all, my first animation, I've struggled all these years to
Oh,
be
In the good old summertime.
Nifty 90s. And made you do the
horse.
over and over and over.
He gives me a scene, my first scene to animate. It's the worst scene that anybody ever received. It's a horse and buggy reacting to Mickey driving an Oldsmobile while they sing. This horse sees it, and the horse and buggy,
Yes.
he didn't want to do that, so he gives it to me, my first animation. And then he made me shoot 15 rough tests of that. How do you make a horse jump into a tree? And you wouldn't help me.
Did I do that?
You're a miserable guy. The second miserable thing is, when we moved to the new studio, we had a commissary, and they would deliver anything we wanted. And I ordered a chocolate soda, and Tom and Ward watched me guzzle this down, and Ward said, "I'll buy that soda for you." He says, "if you'll drink 10 more."
And
best thing I
you
ever
said that line.
I said, "It's the best thing I ever had. I could drink 10 of them." He said, "I'll buy them." So we ordered 10 chocolate sodas. They're delivered to the room. He's laughing. It isn't very funny. And I started drinking them. By this time, the whole unit is gathered around. Walt Kelly and Freddie Moore.
Watching him.
Watching me. And I get through the 8th, struggling, and I couldn't get the 9th down. I said, "I've got a pain. I've got stomach cramps." And I fell on the floor moaning. They called the nurse, because now they got worried I was going to die. And Hazel, the nurse, comes running in her white outfit. She says, "Oh my God, what's happened?" And Ward says, "He drank 9 ice cream sodas." And she says, "Oh gosh," and kicks me and walked out. Do you remember? You did that.
When did we work? I've forgotten.
Ward started the Firehouse Five. He played a great trombone, tailgate trombone. Clark Mallory on the clarinet. Frank Thomas, a great animator, on the piano. And who played the sax?
Pinner,
Pinner played the sax. And
a bass sax.
Bass sax.
I got interested in fire engines, and we ended up
Wearing the helmets.
yeah, wearing white fire hats. Everybody was a chief.
And red suspenders.
Yes, no, white suspenders.
Were they white?
Red shirt
Oh,
and dark blue pants.
very colorful.
And everywhere we went, people laughed. I mean, they felt warm with us.
Well, it was show business.
Dear boys, you look great. Signed, Walt. Walt. Look, Walt, I finished that Tweedledee and Tweedledum scene.
Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
I had trouble with the personnel, the head of that department. They said I was playing my trombone in the afternoon and upsetting the other artists.
You were disruptive.
Yes.
Disruptive ward.
And that was one of my periods when I didn't feel like working.
Well, you also didn't feel like driving normally on the freeways, as I recall.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. He goes down to Western costume. This is how his mind works. And he rents a gorilla outfit. And he drives his car down the Pasadena freeway,
Yes.
causing all kinds of accidents and people staring at a gorilla driving a sports car. You are disruptive. You were disruptive.
Yes. That was, I could have been arrested.
And then some, yes. I left in '42 and joined the Air Force and was assigned to heavy bombardment. I was based in England, flying B-17s, and I flew 35 missions over Germany in a B-17. And you know what was on my bomber, my B-17 bomber over Germany? I painted the Reluctant Dragon on it.
Oh, you're just flattering me.
Huge, 8 foot high.
With a great big belly button.
Yeah. Being young, I always wanted to fly a fighter. Instead of coming home, I signed up for fighters and flew the rest of the war in P-51 Mustang.
How'd you get through all that?
Flak, they missed me. Didn't you work on Victory Through Air Power?
Well, those were the happiest moments of my life. I did the space pictures with Willie Lay and Von Braun, because they came over from Germany after the war was over, and were our speakers.
The payload in the top section will consist of 10 crew members plus equipment.
I introduced the first one, that was Man in Space, what happens to you if you didn't wear a space suit. You freeze on one side, you melt on the other.
He would soon broil on the one side and freeze on the other.
When President Eisenhower saw Man in Space, he realized that none of his generals in the Pentagon knew what it was all about. And would you believe he asked Walt if he could borrow a print of that picture to run for the brass in the Pentagon? He flew them all in for a couple of weeks and ran this every day. And I always got a kick out of that. And then Mars and beyond.
Mars is very populated with luminous birds who do not fly.
I was shooting a short film over at Columbia Pictures, and the assistant came up to me and said, "Someone wants you on the phone, Dave." And I said, "Well, can't you see I'm rehearsing and no time for that?" He says, "It's Walt Disney." I said, "Sure it is." And I pick up the phone. I said, "What the hell do you want?" And this voice says, "Don't you talk to me that way, bud." And I knew it was Walt. I said, "Walt?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "Come on out here. I think I've got something you'll be interested in." So I go out there after I finish shooting, which turned out to be Pollyanna.
Yeah.
And I read it and said, "I'll do it, Walt. I love it." So I had to jump back to this novel, which was published in 1912, so I came running to Ward.
Entrevue.
He had a vast library of background material. I said, "What do you have for turn of the century.
Here's an old paper doll. This is the way I looked back in 1950.
Do you remember the book you loaned me? Among the Folks in History. Well, this gave me the backbone for the turn of the century with the horse and buggies. Beautiful pen and ink drawing of that. And that was what gave me the opening. Also, we stage a fire in the picture, a fire at the orphan school, and Ward had all these marvelous cars and fire trucks and pumper trucks. He had these in his backyard. I mean, he accumulated these old things, and you loaned them to me for the film.
Well, I remember that Walt says, saw that I was being paid, and he...
Good.
Yeah, he says, how come they're paying you?
I'm glad you got some money out of it because they were priceless old cars. He was an interesting man to work with, I'll tell you, because there are very few producers who work well with writers. He was one of them. I remember the incident with Walt. I had shot a scene with the head of the camp, Miss Inch, where the girls were all fighting and the table was collapsing, and she holds the cake up to save a cake, and it sticks on the nose of a totem pole figure up there. And she lowers her hands, where's the cake? And she looks up, and just then it falls and goes in her face. And I went to Walt, I said, let's cut that, Walt, it's too corny. And he said, no, Bud, he says, you've got to learn. He said, the level of an audience will love this. I said, well, against my wishes, let's leave it in. And it was a huge laugh. I learned a lot from this guy.
He made big decisions, and they were always right.
Yeah. What is it, over 60 years I've known you, for God's sake. That's an inside
Don't get too close. He was crazy.
I was crazy.
Yes.
Well, you were normal, right? Mr. Normal. We had fun.